far north of our planet is covered with millions of square kilometers of ice. The continental ice on land and the sea ice on the ocean. In Nunavut, Canada, the Inuit village of Ikpiarchuk, also known as Arctic Bay, is a gateway to this mysterious world of sea ice. We are 700 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle in the land of the midnight sun. It's the beginning of June, and there is 24 hours of daylight.
The Arctic is changing faster than anywhere else on the planet. And they say that what happens in the Arctic, so goes the planet. So this is an incredible place for us to learn and predict what can happen through global climate change.
The Lancaster Sound flow edge is majestic.
Every time I come here, I'm amazed. It's spectacular. It's extraordinary. It feels like all the creatures of the Arctic have come to greet us.
Beluga.
Yeah. After all this hard work and all the tough conditions, this is the perfect
day. Hein? Ouais, pour moi, c'est vraiment la meilleure place au monde. Ici, présentement, là, il n'y a pas de meilleur endroit que ça.
So, there's the beluga.
Les belugas qui s'en viennent.
Mother and calf.
Yeah. Narwhal. Narwhal. Ouais.
It's amazing to find yourself only a few meters away from these giant marine mammals who can weigh up to 100 tons.
In the spring, bowhead whales gather near the flow edge. It's incredible to think that they feed on animals no bigger than a grain of rice.
The spring bloom creates a chain reaction. Zooplankton is a fat-rich feast for shrimps and small fish. These attract bigger fish, like Arctic cod. The cod are eaten by seals, belugas, and narwhals that are in turn hunted by polar bears, orcas, and Inuits.
But a warming climate is undermining the base of this food web. With sea ice disappearing earlier each spring, the massive spring bloom now happens sooner. It seems incredible that the once predictable world of Arctic sea ice is changing so rapidly that it will affect not only the tiniest, the plankton, but also the largest, the bowhead whales. We are worried not only about the future of Arctic wildlife and the Inuit, but also about the effects of changing sea ice on our global climate. As the ice comes and goes each year, it helps to drive the planet's climate. White snow reflects up to 90% of the sun's energy back into space. The sea ice acts like a blanket to keep the ocean cold. Millions of square meters of sea ice are lost. Dark seawater absorbs the sun's heat, and as the ocean temperature rises, so does the planet's. The Canadian Arctic is now warming 3 times faster than the rest of the world.
The ice disappears earlier and earlier each spring and forms later in the fall. If this trend continues, the unthinkable could happen as early as 2040. This means 3 months of summer with no sea ice on the entire Arctic Ocean. We're heading to the wild island of Kiguktaluk, home to many polar bears and walruses. First, we have to travel 80 kilometers across the huge bay of Naujet. 3 hours later, we finally see the island and the supreme predator of the region.
We're looking for a large walrus colony, which usually stays on the shores of Kikiktaluk Island. We're worried because over the past 50 years, the ice cover here in mid-July has decreased by 60%.
Normally, a walrus would use the ice for breeding, for birthing the young. A mother walrus spends her time on the ice and then forages nearby so that she can feed herself and come back to nurse her young. But as the ice moves around, it might take that walrus farther and farther from traditional foraging grounds.
That's how nature works. For millions of years, animals have adapted by moving close to their food, so they don't waste energy looking for it. That will happen more and more because there is less and less ice.
Some of our guides have told us that it's easy for us to observe the polar bear in the summertime. Well, it seems to me that the polar bear are also observing us because they've been right in our camp. So it was magical, but also a little scary when the polar bears were coming in at night. Not just one, but several different ones coming closer and closer to camp. Are they looking at us as a meal? Of course. So they're very patiently kind of working their way around the edges and then coming in closer. And our guides were up all night trying to scare them away and move them off. I mean, nobody wants to shoot a polar bear. The technique is just to make noise, sometimes using a gun and shooting nearby to scare the animal off. But still, they're very persistent, and what an incredible thing that was to see. It's a remarkable feeling to be predated on, and that's kind of a humbling experience.
Les ours polaires ici, dans ce territoire, sont quand même bien portants. Les plus gros ours polaires au monde aussi. Il y a beaucoup ce qu'on appelle des grandfathers, des grands-pères, parce que c'est des ours polaires immenses et énormes qui peuvent avoir facilement 3 mètres là, de hauteur.
This is one of those grandfathers. It would be suicidal to dive with him. He must be hungry. He's on the hunt for seabirds. It's easy to see why these magnificent animals are the symbol of the Arctic. But now they are also the poster child for climate change here. That's because some polar bears now spend 7 weeks more on land than they did in the 1980s.
Et c'est sûr que le voir dans cet état-là, ça me fait quelque chose de voir que cet animal-là, à un moment donné, va peut-être disparaître. Certains scientifiques nous disent que parce qu'on commence à avoir des pislis, donc des accouplements entre justement des ours polaires et des grizzlies, et que c'est cette voie-là que l'ours polaire va prendre pour pouvoir survivre.
The Arctic from 20 years ago does not exist anymore. And the Arctic of today will probably not exist in 20 years.
Quand on fait de la plongée sous glace, il faut absolument s'attacher. Si ça va mal, tout simplement, on va donner des coups sur le câble et la personne en haut va nous tirer d'affaire. Par contre, si jamais que les changements climatiques s'emballent, là, il n'y aura personne pour tirer sur cette câble-là pour sauver l'humanité.
So imagine that we are all on a piece of ice, and we must absolutely maintain it. Because if it melts, our chance to stabilize the climate will also be melting away.